Yeah. Do you just want me to jump straight into the NDE or what led up to it?
Yeah, well, let's start with the lead up. We'll start with the
Okay.
lead up and then we'll go into the NDE.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, thanks for having me on. And my near-death experience actually started 15 years before I had it. I was 10 years old and I started developing symptoms of a rare neurological movement disorder, myoclonus dystonia, which would be undiagnosed for 8 years because of how rare it is. And on top of that, as a kid, I also experienced some, interesting metaphysical things that society didn't really teach me about, church didn't teach me about, school definitely didn't teach me about. And so those two things kind of combined and they both ramped up. The older I got, the worse the myoclonus dystonia got. And that involved a lot of involuntary muscle movements, non-epileptic seizures, um, muscle rigidity, muscle spasms, nerve pain, and then came with anxiety, depression, OCD, and insomnia. While, of course, if you're undiagnosed with a rare illness and you don't know what's going on with your body, you're going to probably be upset anyway, but it is actually a psychological symptom of the condition as well.
Wow. Wow.
So early on, I stopped being able to sleep for the most part. It started as I would sleep for a couple hours a night. And, that was in middle school, junior high. By the time I got to high school, the nights started getting longer and the days got longer because I was sleeping less and less. And there were points where I could not sleep for a whole day. Then by the time I reached my early 20s, I would go 2 to 3 days with zero sleep. No cat nap, no shut eye, no 10-minute refresh, just absolute no sleep. Blessing of the condition is I have like my brain is just super active. So it didn't affect my ethic or my schooling or anything like that. I could show up as if I slept really good for a whole day, where most people had to have a rough night's sleep and it affects their whole day. Um, by day four, I did start getting more sluggish, more startled, and by day five, I'd start hallucinating. So um, it was pretty common for me to go 2 days though without sleep, and that plays into what happened the night of my NDE, which we'll fast forward to when I'm 25, which is just about over 8 years ago, 2017. And I've been diagnosed, but we had already tried every option and all the pharmaceuticals, all the homeopathic alternative medicines. The doctors just basically said, we don't know what else to do. You're on your own. And I always had this gut knowing, like this real deep rooted knowing that I was going to die before I reached the age of 28. I didn't know how, I didn't know why, I didn't know, no one knew if myoclonus dystonia was going to be fatal. They said it wasn't progressive, but I had 15 years of progression at that point. So I took what they said with a teaspoon of salt. And we come into April 2017, and the myoclonus dystonia is just exhausting. I'm in pain, I'm hurting, my body is moving constantly, so that's fatiguing. I'm not sleeping, that's extra fatiguing. And there's still some weird paranormal metaphysical stuff going on, but you know, just I'm tired. I am mentally, emotionally, physically, and I didn't know at the time, but spiritually exhausted. And then I get the flu. And, like of course I've had the flu, I've had the cold, yeah, I've had colds, I've had several things, and just let it run its course. But I couldn't eat, I couldn't keep water down. I really just that was the top of the iceberg that led to this big compounding experience. And I fought it for 2 or 3 weeks and just got more and more fatigued, more and more tired, and more confused. And at 2 a.m. on April 27th, 2017, my body gave out. Everything gave out. I had no more willpower. I had no more heart, no more energy. My body was literally empty of energy. And so my heart stopped. It gave out. And I actually felt that moment when it stopped. And that was pretty interesting. But what is more interesting is when I came back and felt it start again. But I felt my heart stop. And after, right before that, I heard this big booming voice ask, "Are you ready?" I had no idea what I was ready for, but I was like, well, something's out there. And it was kind of at this precipice of me crying out, like, I can't do this anymore. And I meant that with all of me. And at that moment, I heard this voice, "Are you ready?" Well, something's here. Something answered, something answered my cry. I didn't hesitate to say yes. And that's when I felt like really 3 hard pounds in my chest and my heart stopped. And that very instant, I was completely separated from my body. I was no longer aware of Brianna. I was no longer aware of Earth or humanity or anything. And I was in this beautiful blackness. Like you think of blackness maybe being like scary or, dark or something, but it was absolutely beautiful, loving, full of energy. Like every possibility, every beginning was there. And that's where I met the creator or the voice that called out asking if I was ready. And it was just this ever loving presence. No judgment, no hate, no, life review of how awful of a person I was, which I tried really hard not to be an awful person despite not feeling well. But none of these life reviews that you hear a lot about, but that's not what happened to me. Just love. And I knew I was home. And that's where I came from. And I was, I didn't have a body. I was just energy in this energy. And while I didn't know about Brianna or humanity or Earth, my consciousness knew something drastic had changed. And I just had the thought, am I dead? And out of this darkness, 3 monks appear. Don't ask me why monks, I still don't know, but I believe they're Tibetan because they had the beautiful red robes with the gold. They're sitting cross-legged, floating by, and just smiling with kind of like this, if you only knew, they didn't say anything, but they were kind of laughing at me. I didn't feel judged or, upset about it. I was just like, oh, okay, that's curious. And they floated back into the blackness. And right after that is where I went into a tunnel. And this tunnel was vibrant blue, like whitish blue. Just there's nothing on earth. I have searched for 8 years to try to find something that is as blue, like vibrant blue as this. And I am going through it at supersonic speed, and there's binary code all around me. And I can tell that the binary code is being downloaded into my soul, and I don't know what it is, but I knew it'd come to me when I needed it, and it was really just amazing. And I couldn't tell you how long even that felt. It felt like an instant and forever all at once. Then I go into another place. I went into many places in my experience, and it's this completely white space, opposite of the blackness. It's all white. And no floors, no ceiling, no doors, but there's a pile of number on the floor. And it's like ones through nines, just giant black numbers. And this is the only time I had a human-like body in my experience because I remember picking up these numbers and throwing them up in the air like a child and saying, "No wonder you love creating," because I realized the universe was created in math. Once again, don't know why I was so excited. I didn't think I was a math nerd at all, but I thought it was just the most exciting thing ever. Right after that, I went into the most fun part of my experience. Even though everything was very joyful and loving and curious, leading up to it, the next part is where I actually got to play. I got to play with reality. I didn't even know that's what I was doing, but it was kind of reminiscent of Earth. There was buildings, there was other beings, there's machinery, utility poles, trees, and stuff like that. And I remember early on in this part of the experience, I saw these beams sliding down trees covered in snow. That looks like so much fun. I want to do it. I don't think I like snow, even though there's no temperature or anything. I was just like, I don't think I like snow. And instantly, I'm sliding down these trees covered in moss next to these other beams, and I have this realization, what if they like snow, but I don't, and they're sliding down next to me on what they want, while I'm sliding down on what I want, and we're experiencing these realities simultaneously together, but different. And it wasn't a huge conundrum or, mind mess as it is here. But it was just, oh, that's so cool. And there were beings working on machines. One had a huge flame out of it, and it was kind of in the center of what you might consider a plaza or a square. And there was another time where I was stocking shelves with these other beings. No one ever said a word in this experience, not even telepathically, but we all communicated. We all kind of moved together and just, we were all one, even though I had no idea who they were. I didn't even know if they'd ever been human before. This was the most time of the whole experience. I mean, this was definitely the bulk of my experience. But there's there was no concept of time, so I can tell you it felt like I was there for a few months. Yeah. And
Wow.
uh,
Okay.
this whole place that I was in with these other beings, we actually danced as if we had choreographed this dance for millennia. Once again, no one communicated, no one telepath telepathically sent messages, like audible messages or anything. And yet we all moved as one, and it was beautiful and exciting. And yet I still was completely myself and an individual. It's such a fascinating thing to think about. But I guess if you go out to a club or, somewhere where there's dancing and everyone's dancing, you don't know each other, but you guys are all, dancing and you start dancing together, but you're not talking. It's kind of like that in a way. There was another part where I tried to learn how to fly. I was really bad at it.
Were you going to sleep at all? Like, do you remember being like living there, or was this more experience to experience to experience? You just kept having these experiences, and it was just
Just kept having experiences and experiences and
bizarre.
experiences. But there was no fatigue. There was no tired. There was no time. There was no energy drain. It was just, yeah, boom, 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 boom. And when I tried to learn to fly, I severed my arm on a utility pole.
Like, like
Just
you like broke it? You
so
broke your arm?
it came completely off
Oh.
in this experience. And I was like, there's no pain, there's no fear. I was just like, I wonder what's gonna happen. I'm just looking at it, still like flying, like trying to fly, by the way. And my arm's just kind of next to me. And then I see it reattach with binary code again. And I was like, oh, cool. Like nothing was in, like, oh, how did that happen? Or I never had to understand the why. I just always thought, oh, cool. That was my constant emotion through this whole time. There was another part which I still find so ironic because at the beginning I was like, I don't think I like snow. Well, I ended up in like a snowman-like body where I was a little, you know, pile of snow. And I had the thought, I wonder what happens if I get too close to that flame that they're working on in the middle of this plaza. Well, instantly I'm under the flame and I'm melted and I'm a puddle of eyeballs. It's like, huh, I wonder if anyone will put me back together. And just like that, these other beings came and put me back together once again without saying anything. And so obviously this part was very extensive. It felt like it went on for months. And there's even times recalling it that it was so extensive that just I I can't cover everything. So at the end of this part of the experience, we are all by a barbed wire fence. And here you can see through a barbed wire fence. But there, it was all blurry. and I couldn't see beyond it. And there was an opening, and some of these beings started to cross. And I just had the knowing I couldn't go with them. And I also knew that what was beyond was a higher frequency or a higher level, even though I had no idea where I was. I just knew it was something amazing beyond there, and I wasn't allowed to go. Not because I was in trouble, not because I'd done something wrong. I just knew I couldn't go. And then I jumped into the last part of my experience, which was it felt like a very closed, like tight room. And in front of me was this beautiful scroll. And behind me, I could feel the presence of seven powerful beings. And depending on your culture and your religion, some say it could be, the Council of Seven or angels or archangels. There's been a few people who have given me ideas because I don't inherently know. But in front of me, there's the scroll starts to get beautiful, sparkly golden script written on it. And that is when I suddenly remembered that I had this human experience. And with that came my human ego, and apparently, this knowledge was so great. I was like, huh, you're showing this to a human. And just like that, the script went away, the scroll rolled up, and I was instantly snapped back into my body, which is where I felt my heart start again, which was very crazy.
And then you got up and just went on with your life, and now you're talking to
Oh,
me.
oh, no, 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 no.
So
I actually had like a major anxiety attack because I was like, oh my gosh, I have been dead for 2 months. And my parents were actually on their way to come see me during that time. Like they had a flight planned for that day. It's like, oh no, they got here. I was dead. They're so heartbroken. They're so devastated. They disregarded my wishes to be cremated. I'm buried in a coffin 6 feet underground. This is how people get buried alive. Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? And before I opened my eyes, I was like, okay, go back, just go back. And so I tried deep breathing. I tried begging. I tried meditating. I tried self-hypnosis, and nothing was working at all. I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to open my eyes and see where I am and what's going on. And I open my eyes and I'm in the same place. Then I am even more confused. It's like, okay, it's still dark out. I look at my phone because I had put away my phone. This is how um, I know the exact times because I put my phone down right before I gave up, and it said 2 a.m. And when I picked it back up, it said 2:08. I was like, okay, is it 2:08 2 weeks from now? Is it no? Okay, maybe that doesn't make any sense. Maybe it's a couple days from now and my parents missed their flight or something. I don't, I'm trying to go through all these human logic reasoning, and then I look at the date. I'm like, it's the same date, and my mind just kind of imploded. I was like, there's no way. I have no idea just what happened, what's going on. And I do not really recall what happened between that time and when my mom actually did arrive. But I told her about this wild experience because I've had wild, metaphysical experiences and paranormal experiences before. She was always there to listen and help guide and not judge. And um, I'd never really known about near-death experiences. I didn't know about out-of-body experiences or, any of these kinds of things. And I'm just telling her all of the stuff I experienced and how I felt like I was shoved into a sausage case and I was really uncomfortable in my body and a different type of uncomfortable. It's like when you're wearing clothes 10 times too small for you. And the walls freaked me out. I kept touching the wall. It was just so solid. And, I probably seemed like an absolute crazy person. Luckily, my mom's been, through a bunch of stuff with me and she didn't judge me at all. And she started bringing up, well, it kind of sounds like this and wow. And in the back of her mind, she's like, oh my gosh, this is one of the like craziest NDE things I've ever heard in my life. I had no idea she was so familiar with near-death experiences. Um, so that goes on for probably the whole day. And in the next coming weeks, I realized I could hear plants and I could feel people's actual pain. So if I drove by a car accident, I could tell where they were injured or if they had not survived the accident. I could also hear people's thoughts. And that wasn't too bad until we were at a restaurant and I just heard the worst of the worst thoughts and I was mortified. And so I actually spiraled into a major depression. I just wanted to go back. I did not want to be here. I didn't know why I came back, what was happening to me. The world was completely different. I mean, it wasn't, but I had all these new senses that I wasn't aware of. And it was a really, really hard time. And I actually took extreme measures to try to go back that were also unsuccessful. And after that extreme measure I took to try to go back, I realized, okay, well, I'm supposed to be here. And so I pulled myself out of it and started about a year later, started volunteering for hospice because that was like, well, if I can't go back, I'm going to get close and I'm going to help other people go there because I could hold that authentic excitement for them without having to say anything. And I volunteered for hospice for 2 years and still did not come to terms with what happened exactly. It would take me 5 years or four until I heard a story that sounded like mine. Because I started looking into near-death experiences, and none of them sounded like mine. People had these beautiful healing castles of marble. They saw their past loved ones. They had life reviews, all of these things. And, it was always, oh, I went into the white light. I'm like, well, I went into blackness, but it sure wasn't hell. So what is that about? And it would take until I heard the story of a atheistic neurosurgeon who had, I think, some kind of encephalitis to the point that he was declared brain dead. And being a neurosurgeon, he also knew he was brain dead and could not have experienced the things he experienced. And his experience was so much like mine, it hit me with a guttural reaction. And that was the moment I knew what had happened to me actually happened. That and I can't remember my dreams 2 seconds after waking up. And this has been 8 years, and I can remember every single part of the experience with absolute clarity as if I'm back there.
That is bizarre. I mean, that is a bizarre experience, Bree.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's not easy.
you didn't get any kind of download or any kind of like, hey, this is what's going on. Like nobody spoke that entire time to you. The
No.
monks smiled at you.
Yep.
They kind of floated by.
Hmm.
Wow. And then the
I,
script started going at the end, and it was
yep.
who knows what that would happen. But it sounds like you kind of said something, and then as far as you know, it
Yeah, I just I,
went
I
away.
just thought it. I thought, oh, you're showing this to a human because you don't need to speak over there.
Hmm.
My thoughts instantly created reality, and it's like everyone was aware of what I was thinking and feeling. Um, but yeah, I didn't even realize until probably a month ago that there was actually no words ever spoken to me. Like I said, it's been over 8 years, and it took me until last month to realize, wow, no one spoke that whole time. The whole 3-ish months I was there.
Wow, Bree. Yeah, that would be very difficult. Um, okay. Your abilities now, like hearing the plants talk, and is this still a thing?
So
Just,
I don't hear plants talk to me anymore, but I do have a fantastic green thumb and can bring them back from death or the brink of death. And I love it. And I can kind of hear in a way what they need. If they're getting too much sun, too much water, um, just unhappy with something. And they've started telling me their names, which has been a fun new thing. I'm like, all right, I'll just go with it. At this point, I'm like, I've already faced my biggest critics, so what if I sound like a crazy person? Because maybe the crazy people really have it figured out.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, I'm with it. Okay. How are you coping now? Like, I mean, you're telling this story, and so I mean, you're letting people in on it, which is fantastic. how are you coping? That would be my, and then has there been any other experience through a dream or anything like that that's kind of giving you some kind of resolution, or are you still just kind of like, wow, that was that was an experience?
No, I'm so happy to report that I have come a long way, especially since I realized what happened. And then it did take me a while to be able to talk about how it happened and all of that, and then understand why. But hospice was a good first step. And then I did receive a brain surgery for the myoclonus dystonia that was pretty successful. And that was helpful. That got me out of survival. I've been in survival at that point for 22 years in one way or another. And that gave me time to process and go within. I took time off work and I learned about transcendental meditation and I actually heard about Dr. Joe Dispenza in 2019, but I was in such a state of survival. I was like, who cares that I healed his back? Ah, we've already tried everything. It's, I don't have energy for this. But when I got that brain surgery, it provided me enough relief that I was able to actually work on myself and work on things and work on, the PTSD of the NDE and the illness and the grief of I didn't really realize I'd lost my childhood and young adult life and just how traumatic the whole everything was in the aftermath. And so I did a lot of inner work and I actually went to one of his retreats. And the reason I actually looked back into him is because I listened to him talk about going into the blackness where there is nowhere, no time, nothing, no body, no place. It's like that sounds an awfully a lot like where I went in the my NDE, the first part of my NDE, which was amazing. That was where all possibilities were and all the energy was. So I was like, well, let's give it a shot. And so learning, I don't know what kind of meditation he calls it, but I would say it's transcendental because you transcend your 3D physical world and body. And I ended up back in that blackness. And in that blackness, without having to die, which is so much less traumatic, part of that binary code came back. And I saw it circulating through my brain and my heart. And it actually rewired my brain and healed me to the point where I shut off my deep brain stimulator that I fought 22 years to get. I shut it off. It's a battery in the chest. There's leads that go up and into the deep part of the brain and send out electrical impulses. And I still have the little controller. And so it's like a cell phone with the programming on it. And then you connect it kind of like a Wi-Fi router. And then you hold it up to the battery and it connects and sends that programming information. So, I wasn't too nervous if it didn't work, if I just was like, oh, that, I have this wild idea and it doesn't work, it didn't pan out, but it did. But I will tell you, like any little adjustment on the program, I could feel. And I would either twitch more or I could feel way better, way worse. And turning it off, I would start twitching like a fish out of water within a minute. So I wait. I turned it off and I wait. A minute goes by, then an hour, then half a day, then a whole day, and I sleep through the night. And then days go by, and weeks go by, and months go by, and years go by. And here I am, still with it off, and no symptoms of myoclonus dystonia. So
Ah, it's amazing,
that,
Bree.
yeah, that was a humongous revelation to why my NDE happened. Just I could look back and see exactly why I had the illness, why I had the NDE, why I had to come back, what it started leading into my purpose of being here and helping others, and jumping into my mission and my not really my mission, but my purpose. And that in itself has given me so much comfort. I now know how to connect with that space anytime. I'm constantly connected and I am in such a trusting and mode. It's just like I let it go, I let it flow, And it's like, if I die tomorrow, I'm living my best life now. And I am so excited to go back, but I no longer am trying to go back, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Gosh, well, what a beautiful, I mean, it's not over yet, but what a beautiful way to, I don't want to say end, but that's awesome. That's awesome. Congratulations. Are
Thank you.
you, the TM, Transcendental Meditation, I mean, are you doing classic TM as I also do TM, or I learned it
Okay.
through, and then I just started. This is really recent for me. I'm only about 4 weeks into it. So relatively new to Transcendental
Are you doing
Meditation.
the mantra and
Mm-hmm.
the chanting what kind? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, it is not. That's why I said I don't know what he calls it, because I know traditionally it's through mantras and chanting.
Mm-hmm.
But transcendental meditation is where you transcend your body, and this
Mm-hmm.
is another way to do it. But yeah, it
Yeah.
is not your typical chanting.
Amazing. Yeah, I don't think there, I mean, even when you learn it, I'm gonna put air quotes, it's a mantra. And you don't
Yeah.
need anybody to really tell you that. I mean, it's
Well,
a
and
mantra type of meditation.
everyone claims to say they have the one right way, and I strongly believe there is no one right way. We
No.
are well, and I found the same with our near-death experiences. People ask all the time, well, why are they all so different? Well, think about it. We're living such unique experiences as humans. Why would our souls be any different? Because we are just a soul that is in a temporary, meat suit, basically. And I also like to think, if you go to a dinner party with your significant other, and you get home, and your significant other is just, not very happy, and you're just like, oh my gosh, that was great, the food was great, I loved the lasagna, the music was amazing, oh, and the stories that Joe told were fantastic, and then your partner's just like, oh my gosh, the lasagna was way too saucy and it was way too loud, and that person couldn't shut up. You guys were having the same experience, in the same environment, and yet your experiences were so drastically different. It's, that's kind of how I think of everything to life, that, there's no one wrong, right or wrong way to think, to meditate, to heal, to process, to do anything, because we are all these individual souls living these very individual experiences, but we get to live them together.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's that story. I don't know where it comes from, an old short story or what it is. Someone listening knows, but the old elephant where everyone's blindfolded and there's three people touching an elephant. One's touching the body, one's touching the leg, and they think they're touching a tree. The other one's touching a trunk, right? It's just, they're all the experience is
Hmm.
different based on what they see, but they're all touching an elephant. And so we're
Yeah.
all only seeing our own little vision, just like you can't see ultraviolet and
Hmm.
certain plants or certain animals can, just like you can't hear certain frequencies, certain animals can. We're all kind of going through that with our own lens.
Yeah, we definitely have these, I think we have these big, fat, lenses that are, we can see very, very tiny on this ginormous scale of things. I often wonder, like, what do we look like under that, big picture? And is someone looking at us on the microscope? Are we just in the petri dish, really?
Yep. Yeah. Well, that's an amazing story. I mean, it's definitely very unique. I've never heard anything like that. Um, Gosh, I mean, it would be fun for you when you get back to that kid. What was that like? Tell me a little bit more about this place. Can I go? Can you go back? Or if that was just like a certain, like that's the fun part, right? It's like you don't know. Like maybe that was a temporary what you needed at that time. It was a break. It was fun. It was maybe it's exactly the experience you needed, right? At
Yeah,
that
for sure.
time with nobody talking, but it was just perfect in its own way, and that's what you needed
Yeah,
at that time.
it was absolutely what I needed. And I've also come to an understanding, that there's all these different levels, and it's all on your frequency. So some people who have these hellish experiences usually do so because, they're fearful, or they're resentful, or they're regretful in this lower vibrations. And so it's going to take you to a lower vibrational place. And these higher, emotions and frequencies like gratitude, lack of fear, trust, love, all that stuff, that's going to get you way up there. And because I had come from, just a decade and a half of just really, struggling and trying to survive every day, I definitely wasn't, super, just full of joy and gratitude. I tried, and I still kind of have the same person. I really have the same personality. I try to find the joy in life all the time and refuse to let the illness stop me from anything. But um, I think I would have ended up somewhere differently had I not had a brief moment of absolute peace and serenity when my body gave up before I detached.
Hmm.
But because I had that serenity and peace right before, but I still had all this, trauma and garbage and PTSD. I didn't get skyrocketed, but I got, kind of in this somewhere in between. And it was lovely. Like I would love to go back. I would love to go higher, but I would love to go back. It was so much fun. So I think, there are definitely these places where you can just chill and heal a little bit. And it's what I needed.
So cool. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story. I greatly appreciate you, and I'm happy to hear where you're at now. That's awesome. It's
Well,
very
thank you
cool.
for having me, and I'm glad you had me at this time where I am doing a lot better.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. All right, Bree, until next time, we'll speak again. But thank you again. I'll keep you posted when this is uploaded.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, cheers, Bree. Bye.